Before we begin, if these stories resonate with you, please subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us continue bringing you these accounts. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Now, a respectful note. This story involves the Wind River Reservation and addresses the very real crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. While fictionalized, it's rooted in awareness of these tragic realities. Let's begin. My name is Sheriff John River, and I've worked in Fremont County, Wyoming for 18 years. Half that time, I've been sheriff. I know this territory like I know my own reflection. Every dirt road, every ranch, every family. The Wind River Indian Reservation covers a massive portion of my jurisdiction, and I've worked closely with the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho tribal police for my entire career. I thought I knew everything about this land. I was wrong. It started on March 14, 2006, with a missing person report that shouldn't have existed. I was at my desk in Lander, going through paperwork, when Deputy Sarah Martinez walked in with a file folder and a confused expression I'd never seen on her before. "Sheriff, I need you to look at something." I don't know what it is. She spread the contents across my desk. A missing person report filed by a woman named Rita Blackburn, reporting her daughter, Angela, missing. The report was dated that morning, filled out at our station by Rita herself. Sarah had witnessed it. "Okay," I said. "What's the problem?" "Let's get the investigation started." "That's the thing, Sheriff." I went to Rita's house to do the follow-up interview, and she looked at me like I was crazy. She doesn't have a daughter named Angela. She has 2 sons, both grown and living in Casper. No daughter. Never had a daughter. I looked at the report. Rita's signature, clear as day. Angela Blackburn, age 19, last seen March 13, 2006. Maybe she was confused when she filed it. Mental health issue. That's what I thought. But Sheriff, I was there when she filled it out this morning. I watched her write it. She was completely coherent, talking about her daughter, showing me photos on her phone. Photos on her phone. Did you save them? Document them? Sarah's face went pale. That's the other thing. I took notes. I wrote down everything she told me about Angela. Description, habits, friends, everything. But when I got back to my car, my notes were blank. The pages where I'd written about Angela, they're empty. Like I never wrote anything. She showed me her notepad. Pages with her handwriting clearly visible on other cases, but the pages from the Angela Blackburn interview were pristine, like they'd never been touched. "That's not possible," I said. "I know, but there's more. I checked our database. There's no birth certificate for Angela Blackburn, no school records, no social media presence. It's like she never existed. But I remember Rita talking about her this morning. I remember the photos she showed me. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Take me to Rita's house." We drove to the reservation, to a small house on the outskirts of Fort Washakie. Rita Blackburn answered the door, a Shoshone woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. "Sheriff River, Deputy Martinez, what brings you out here?" I held up the missing person report. "Mrs. Blackburn, you filed this report this morning about your daughter Angela." She looked at the paper, at her own signature, and her face clouded with confusion. "I don't understand. I didn't file that, and I don't have a daughter. Just my 2 boys, Marcus and Thomas. This is your signature." "Yes, that's my signature, but I don't remember writing this, and, Sheriff, I'd remember if I had a daughter." We spent an hour with her, going over the timeline, checking her house. There were no photos of Angela, no bedroom for a 3rd child, nothing to suggest a daughter had ever lived there. But Rita's signature on that report was real, verified by our documents expert later that day. Sarah and I sat in my truck after leaving, staring at the mountains in the distance. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah said. "I remember taking that report. I remember Rita talking about her daughter. How can I remember something that apparently never happened?" "I don't know, but we need to figure this out." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the blank pages in Sarah's notebook, about Rita's genuine confusion, about the signature that was real but described someone who'd never existed. Around 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was Tribal Police Chief Raymond Redfeather, a longtime friend and colleague. "John, we need to talk. Can you come out to the reservation, now?" "What's going on, Ray?" "Something I can't explain over the phone. Something that's happened before, but we don't talk about it. It's time you knew." I drove out to the Tribal Police Station, a small building in Fort Washakie. Ray was waiting outside, smoking a cigarette even though he'd quit 5 years ago. "Ray, what's this about?" He took a long drag, then stubbed out the cigarette. "Angela Blackburn. That's what this is about." My blood went cold. "You know about Angela?" "I know about what happened to Angela. And I know about the 19 others before her." 19 others? Ray, what the hell are you talking about? He led me inside to his office and pulled out a locked drawer from his desk. Inside was a journal, old leather, filled with handwriting from multiple people. "This has been kept by tribal police for 30 years, Ray said. "Passed down from chief to chief. It's the only way we remember." He opened it to the most recent entry. It was dated that morning, written in Ray's handwriting. March 14th, 2006. Angela Blackburn, age 19, Shoshone, reported missing by her mother Rita. By afternoon, Rita no longer remembered having a daughter. Birth certificate vanished. Photos disappeared. Only tribal police remember because we wrote it down before the erasure completed. I felt dizzy. Erasure? Ray, what is this? "Sit down, John. This is going to take a while." He poured us both coffee and began. 30 years ago, in 1976, a young Shoshone woman named Mary Littleshield disappeared from the reservation. Tribal police investigated. FBI got involved because of jurisdiction issues. But you know how those cases go. Federal jurisdiction on reservations is a mess. The investigation stalled. No arrest was made. A week after the investigation went cold, Mary's mother went to tribal police saying she couldn't remember her daughter. Not couldn't remember what happened to her, but couldn't remember having a daughter at all. Police thought she was in shock, trauma-induced amnesia. But then they checked records. Mary's birth certificate was blank. Photos of her had empty spaces where she should be. It was like she'd been erased from reality. The tribal police at the time, they were all native. They noticed something the white investigators didn't. They still remembered Mary. While everyone else forgot, while records changed, tribal police who'd written about her in official reports could still recall her. "That's not possible," I said. "People don't just get erased from reality." That's what they thought, too. Until it happened again. And again. Over 30 years, 20 women have disappeared from this reservation. All unsolved, all native. And within days of the investigation going cold, they're erased. Families forget them. Records vanish. They're gone from history itself. But we remember because we write it down in this journal before the erasure happens. And once it's written here, it can't be changed. I opened the journal and started reading. 20 names. 20 young Native women spanning 3 decades. Each entry detailed their disappearance, the failed investigation, and the subsequent erasure. Why hasn't anyone reported this? Why aren't people talking about this? Because everyone forgets except us. And if we tried to tell the media, tried to tell the FBI, what would we say? People are being erased from reality. They'd think we were crazy. Besides, by the time anyone could investigate, the evidence would be gone. The only proof is this journal. There has to be an explanation. Some rational reason. Ray looked at me with ancient eyes. John, this is the Wind River. This is land that's seen genocide, broken treaties, generations of injustice. When murders go unsolved, when justice isn't served, the land itself responds. It erases the victims to protect the guilty. Because if there's no victim, there's no crime. If there's no crime, the corruption of the justice system doesn't have to be acknowledged. That's insane. Is it? You saw Rita Blackburn's signature. You saw Sarah's blank notebook pages. You're seeing the erasure happen in real time. Angela Blackburn existed yesterday. Today, only we remember her because she's written in this journal. I stood up, needing to move, to think. So, what do we do? Just let people be erased. That's what we've been doing for 30 years. What else can we do? We can't solve murders that the federal system won't prosecute. We don't have jurisdiction for major crimes on the reservation. It all goes federal, and federal investigators don't care enough. So the land erases the victims, and life goes on. That's not good enough. I know. But John, you need to understand something. This erasure, it's progressive. First, family forgets, then friends, then records change. Within a week, the person never existed at all. But there's one more stage. What stage? The investigators forget too. Everyone who worked the case, who tried to find the truth, they forget the person ever existed. It's the land's final protection for the killer. And John, you're investigating Angela Blackburn right now. The implication hit me like a truck. You're saying I'm going to forget her. In about 6 days, if the pattern holds, you'll forget Angela Blackburn ever existed. You'll forget you read this journal. You'll forget this conversation. Unless what? Unless you solve the case. That's the rule, we think. If justice is served, if the killer is caught and punished, the erasure stops. The person stays real. But in 30 years, we've never managed it. Federal jurisdiction, lack of resources, suspects who disappear across state lines. We've never solved one in time. I looked at the journal again, at Angela's name written in Ray's careful handwriting. A 19-year-old woman who'd been erased from her own mother's memory, who would be erased from mine in less than a week. Tell me everything you know about Angela's disappearance. Ray pulled out a thin file, not much. She was last seen 3 days ago at a party in Riverton. Off reservation, so some witnesses aren't native. She left with someone. Witnesses disagree on who. No body found yet. Tribal police started investigating, but once it crossed into your jurisdiction, it became complicated. Jurisdiction. Always jurisdiction. That's the heart of it, John. These murders happen in the gaps, on reservation boundaries, in jurisdictional confusion, in the spaces where nobody's quite sure who's responsible for investigating. And in those gaps, young Native women disappear, and then they're erased and nobody remembers to care. I thought about the statistics I knew. Missing and murdered Indigenous women. MMIWW. Numbers that were impossibly high, cases that went nowhere. I'd always thought it was tragedy and systemic failure. I hadn't realized it might be something more, something that literally erased the victims from existence. I need to talk to the witnesses, I said. Everyone who saw Angela before she vanished, before they forget too. They're already forgetting. By tomorrow, maybe the next day, they won't remember her at all. Then I work fast. Ray, I need copies of everything in that journal, every case, every detail. And I need you to help me. We have 6 days to solve a murder that the land itself doesn't want solved. John, nobody's ever done this. In 30 years, every case has ended in erasure. Then it's time we change that pattern. Because I'm not forgetting Angela Blackburn. I'm not letting her be erased. And I'm going to find out who's been killing Native women for 30 years and getting away with it because reality itself protects them. Ray looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but you need to know what you're up against. It's not just a killer we're fighting. It's the land, the curse, whatever force is doing this. It doesn't want justice. It wants peace. And peace means erasure. Then we're going to war. I left Ray's office with copies of the journal entries with Angela's case file, with a list of witnesses who still remembered her. I had 6 days before I forgot everything. 6 days to solve a murder. 6 days to stop an erasure. 6 days to break a pattern that had persisted for 3 decades. As I drove back to Lander, watching the sun rise over the Wind River Range, I thought about Angela Blackburn. 19 years old, with dreams and friends and a future. Now she was disappearing from reality itself, being erased from history because justice had failed her. Not anymore. I was going to remember her. I was going to find her killer. And I was going to make sure that Angela Blackburn and all 20 women in that journal were never forgotten again. The land wanted to erase them to protect corruption. I was going to force it to remember. Day 1. 6 days until I forget Angela Blackburn ever existed. I started with the witnesses. According to Ray's notes, Angela had been at a house party in Riverton on March 11th. 7 people saw her there. 3 of them were Native, 4 were white. I needed to talk to all of them before the erasure claimed their memories. The first witness was Tyler Morrison, a white college student from Central Wyoming College. I found him at his apartment around 9 a.m. Angela? He squinted at the photo I showed him. Yeah, I think I remember her from the party. Pretty girl, quiet. She left with, He trailed off, his eyes going unfocused. Who did she leave with, Tyler? I don't remember. Sorry, man. That party was kind of a blur. Try to remember. This is important. I really can't. Actually, wait. Did you say Angela? I don't think I knew anyone named Angela at that party. I felt a chill. You just said you remembered her. Did I? He looked genuinely confused. Sorry, Sheriff. I don't think I can help you. The erasure was accelerating. Tyler had remembered her when I first showed the photo, but within minutes, the memory was gone. I tried the next witness immediately. Jessica Longman, a Arapaho, worked at the gas station in town. She was more resistant to the erasure, confirming what Ray had said about Native people holding memories longer. Angela Blackburn, yeah, she was at Derek's party. I talked to her for like an hour. She was worried about something. Said she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see. Wouldn't tell me what. Who did she leave with? Some white guy, older, maybe 30s. Not a college kid. He was dressed nice, like he had money. Angela seemed nervous around him, but went with him anyway. Can you describe him? Tall, brown hair, wearing a suit jacket. That's all I remember. But Sheriff, something weird is happening. I've been trying to remember more about that night, and it's like the memories are fading, like they're being pulled out of my head. I know. That's why I need you to write down everything you remember. Right now. Every detail she did, and I made sure to witness it. To verify that the words were there before they could disappear like Sarah's notes had. By noon, I'd interviewed 5 of the 7 witnesses. The white witnesses were already forgetting. The native witnesses remembered more, but felt the pull of erasure, described it as memories becoming slippery or foggy. The description was consistent. Angela had left with an older white man in expensive clothes, someone who didn't belong at a college party, someone with authority, maybe money. But nobody could remember his face. That detail was the first to go, like the erasure protected him specifically. Back at the station, I spread everything out on my desk. Photos, notes, copies of the journal entries. Sarah came in with coffee and her own notebook. "Sheriff, I've been thinking about this. The erasure, the way it works. It's methodical. It removes evidence in a specific order. First, official records, birth certificates, IDs, that stuff. Then family memory, then friends, then physical evidence, then investigators. You've been tracking the pattern? Someone had to. And I think I know why we remember longer than civilians. We write official reports. Something about documenting it in an official capacity creates resistance to the erasure, like the land has to work harder to erase documented truth. So, if we keep documenting, keep writing, we can hold on to the memories longer. Maybe. Ray's journal has held for 30 years. Whatever force is doing this, it can't erase written documentation as easily as it erases human memory. That's our advantage. Then we document everything, every interview, every piece of evidence, every theory. We make this case so thoroughly documented that the land can't erase it. We worked through the afternoon, creating redundant copies of everything, storing files in multiple locations, even sending encrypted backups to my personal email. If reality was going to try to erase Angela Blackburn, it would have to fight through layers of documentation first. By evening, I had a timeline. Angela had been at the party from 8 p.m. to midnight. She'd left with the unidentified man around 12:30 a.m. Her body hadn't been found, but based on the previous cases in Ray's journal, she was likely dead within hours of leaving. The pattern was the same for all 20 previous victims. They'd leave with someone, disappear, and within days the erasure would begin. But nobody had ever identified the killer because by the time investigations progressed, witnesses forgot, evidence vanished, and the case dissolved into nothing. I needed a break in the pattern, something concrete that couldn't be erased. That night, I met with Ray at a diner off the reservation. He brought the journal and his case files on the previous 20 victims. "I've been going through these all day," he said, "looking for patterns. And I found something. All 20 women. They were last seen with someone described as well-dressed, older, authoritative. But nobody ever remembered faces. It's like that detail is specifically protected. So we're dealing with someone who's been killing for 30 years and never been caught because the land erases his victims. Not just erases his victims. Protects him specifically. The erasure is selective. It removes the victim but preserves the killer. That's not natural, John. That's intentional." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe this isn't just the land responding to injustice. Maybe someone figured out how to use the erasure, how to weaponize it. Maybe the killer knows about this phenomenon and uses it deliberately." The implications were staggering. If someone had discovered that murdering Native women on or near the reservation led to the victims being erased, they'd have the perfect method for serial killing. "We need to figure out who knows about the erasure," I said. "Who has access to that knowledge?" "Tribal elders know. Some of them, anyway. It's part of oral history, warnings about the land's response to injustice. But most people dismiss it as metaphor, as legend. What if it's not just legend? What if someone took it literally and tested it? Then we're looking for someone who's been on or around the reservation for 30 years who has access to Native communities, who understands the jurisdictional gaps. We looked at each other, the same realization hitting us both. Law enforcement, I said. Someone in law enforcement. It made horrifying sense. A cop, a fed, someone with a badge would know about MMIW statistics, about jurisdictional failures, about how cases fell through cracks. They'd have access to victims, ability to move without suspicion, and understanding of how investigations worked. And if they'd figured out the erasure, they'd know they were essentially untouchable. We need to look at everyone who's worked these cases over 30 years, I said. Every investigator, every officer, everyone with access. That's hundreds of people, John. Federal agents, tribal police, county sheriffs. And we have 5 days left. Then we narrow it down. Who was present for multiple cases? Who had access across jurisdictions? Who's been around this area for 30 years? We spent that night creating a list, cross-referencing names from the old case files, looking for patterns. By 3 a.m., we had 12 names, people who'd been involved in at least 3 of the previous 20 cases. 5 of them were dead or moved away. 7 were still in the area, and 1 name appeared in 15 of the 20 cases. Special Agent Thomas Crawford, FBI, assigned to the Wind River area since 1978, specialized in major crimes on reservations. Still active, still working. Crawford, Ray said quietly. I've worked with him for 20 years. He's always been efficient. Cases close quickly when he's involved. I thought he was just good at his job. Or good at making cases disappear. Day 2. 5 days until I forget. I couldn't confront Crawford directly. If he was the killer, if he knew about the erasure, he'd just wait me out. In 5 days, I'd forget Angela, forget this investigation, forget everything. But I could investigate him. Quietly. I started with his case history. Sarah accessed FBI databases using her law enforcement credentials. Crawford had worked 243 cases in his career, mostly on reservations across Wyoming, Montana, and South Dakota. Of those 243 cases, 187 remained unsolved. That wasn't unusual for reservation cases. The jurisdictional nightmare meant most went nowhere, but the pattern was striking. The unsolved cases were overwhelmingly murders of young Native women. He's either the worst FBI agent in history, Sarah said, or he's hiding something. Keep digging. Financial records, property holdings, anything that shows pattern. While Sarah worked databases, I went old school. I drove to Crawford's house in Riverton. He lived alone in a nice property on the edge of town, backing up to open land. His personal vehicle was a white SUV, expensive, well-maintained. I didn't approach the house. Instead, I set up surveillance from a distance, camera with a long lens, documenting his movements. Crawford left around 11 a.m., drove to the FBI office in Lander. Routine. But when he left the office around 4 p.m., he didn't go home. He drove to the reservation. I followed at a distance, watching as he stopped at 3 different locations. Each stop was brief, maybe 5 minutes. He wasn't going inside buildings, just pulling over, looking around, then moving on. He was hunting, looking for potential victims. At the 3rd stop, near Fort Washakie, a young Shoshone woman approached his vehicle. They talked through the window for a few minutes. I got photos of the interaction. Then Crawford drove away, and the woman walked back toward town. I wanted to warn her, to tell her to stay away from him, but I had no proof. Just surveillance photos and a theory. If I revealed myself too soon, if Crawford knew I was investigating him, he'd wait out the erasure. I'd forget, and he'd continue. I needed more. That night, I showed Ray the photos. The woman he talked to, that's Melissa Whiteplume. She's 19, works at the tribal college. She's exactly the profile. We need to warn her. And tell her what? That an FBI agent might be a serial killer, but we can't prove it. And also, everyone will forget about it in a few days because of a reality-erasing curse. He was right. We needed concrete evidence. Something that would stand up even after the erasure tried to destroy it. Day 3. 4 days until I forget. The erasure was getting stronger. I could feel it now, a constant pull at my memories of Angela. Several times that day, I'd start to think about something else, and suddenly I couldn't remember why I was investigating. I'd have to check my notes, read about Angela again, force myself to remember. Sarah was experiencing it too. We started checking in with each other hourly, reminding each other what we were doing, who we were looking for. But the documentation was holding. As long as we had written records, we could refresh our memories. The erasure couldn't touch ink and paper as easily as it could touch human recall. I got a break around noon. Sarah found property records. Crawford owned more than just his house in Riverton. He owned 6 properties across Wyoming, Montana, and South Dakota, all in remote areas, all near reservations. These properties, Sarah said, they're all along the path of the previous murders. Look at the timeline. In 1982, 3 women disappeared near Pine Ridge. Crawford bought a property near there in 1981. In 1995, 4 women vanished near the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. He bought land nearby in 1994. He's setting up hunting grounds. Exactly. And look at this most recent purchase. October 2005, he bought 40 acres near Dubois. That's less than an hour from where Angela was last seen. We had a location. A place where Crawford might have taken Angela. A place where evidence might still exist, if we could find it before the erasure destroyed it. Ray, Sarah, and I planned the raid carefully. We couldn't involve more people because they'd forget by the time any warrant was issued. We couldn't wait for official channels because we'd forget before they processed. We had to move now, and we had to move illegally. Day 4. 3 days until I forget. We drove to Crawford's property near Dubois at dawn. 40 acres of wilderness backing up to National Forest. Perfect place to hide evidence. Perfect place to kill. The main structure was a small cabin, locked and empty. But on the property's far edge, hidden in trees, we found a second building. More of a shed, concrete floor, steel door. "This is it," Ray said. "This is where he brings them." We forced the door. The smell hit us immediately. Death, old and new, mixed with chemicals meant to mask it. Inside was a nightmare. Plastic sheeting on the walls, a drain in the concrete floor, tools arranged neatly on a workbench, and photographs, dozens of them pinned to a corkboard. 20 faces, all the women from Ray's journal, all the women who'd been erased. But there were more photos underneath, more victims we didn't know about because they'd been completely erased, removed even from Ray's protected journal. 37 women in total, 37 murders spanning 30 years, and in the corner, a recent addition. Angela Blackburn's driver's license, her phone, her jacket. "We've got him," Sarah breathed. But as we photographed everything, as we documented the evidence, I felt the pull of erasure growing stronger. The land knew we were here, knew we were close to justice, and it was fighting back. My phone rang. It was Crawford. "Sheriff River, I've been wondering when you'd figure it out." My blood went cold. "Crawford, you're at my property right now. I can see you on my security cameras. Took you longer than I expected. Most investigators forget by day 3. We've got evidence. Everything you've done, it's documented. You can't erase this." He laughed. "Can't I?" "Sheriff, do you remember why you're there? Do you remember who you're looking for? And just for a second, I didn't. My mind went blank. Who was I investigating? What case? Then I looked at my notebook, at the name written there. Angela Blackburn, right. The missing woman. The erasure is accelerating, Crawford said. Because you're close. The land protects me, Sheriff. It always has. By tomorrow, you won't remember any of this. You'll drive away, confused about why you broke into my property. By the next day, you won't even remember I exist. We have photos, evidence, documentation. Do you? Check your camera. I looked at the digital camera Sarah had been using. The screen was blank. All the photos we'd taken in the last hour were gone. The files corrupted or deleted, as if they'd never existed. The closer you get to me, the stronger the erasure becomes, Crawford continued. It's protecting its favorite son. I figured this out 20 years ago, Sheriff. I discovered that if you kill Native women in the jurisdictional gaps, they get erased. The land itself covers up the crime. It's beautiful, really. Perfect system. You're insane. I'm protected. There's a difference. Now, you and your friends need to leave my property. Drive away. Forget, in 3 days, none of this will matter. He hung up. We were out of time. The erasure was attacking us directly now, removing evidence in real time. We had 3 days left, and the case was dissolving around us. We need to force justice, Ray said. Right now. Today. If we wait, we'll forget. How? We can't arrest him. Any evidence we gather disappears. Any testimony we give will be forgotten. Then, we don't use the legal system, Ray said. We use the land itself. He pulled out his journal, flipping to a page I hadn't read before. An entry from 1976, from the very first case. The elders say the erasure responds to unsolved murders, Ray read. It removes victims when justice fails. But if justice is served, if the killer is punished, the erasure reverses. The victims return to memory. The land remembers. So we need to kill Crawford, Sarah asked. We need to ensure justice is served, Ray corrected. By any means necessary, because in 3 days we won't remember any of this. Angela Blackburn will be erased completely, and Crawford will continue hunting. I looked at the evidence around us, at the photos of 37 murdered women, at the shed where a serial killer had operated for 3 decades with complete impunity. And I made a decision. We're going to stop him. Today, whatever it takes, we're bringing him to justice, even if that justice is outside the law. Ray nodded. The land doesn't care about our laws. It cares about balance. Crawford has taken 37 lives. It's time he paid for them. 3 days until I forget. 3 days to stop a killer who had reality itself protecting him. 3 days to save Angela Blackburn from being erased completely. The countdown had begun. Day 5. 2 days until I forget Angela Blackburn. 2 days until 37 murdered women are completely erased from existence. We couldn't wait for the legal system. Crawford was right about that. By the time any warrant was issued, any arrest made, we'd have forgotten why. The erasure was accelerating, attacking us directly now because we were close to exposing it. But Ray's journal had given us a clue. Justice stops the erasure. Not legal justice necessarily, but true justice. The land responds to balance, to the restoration of what was taken. We needed a plan that worked within the reality of what we were dealing with. A curse that protected killers and erased victims, and a serial murderer who'd weaponized that curse for 30 years. We can't kill him, Sarah said, as we sat in my truck outside Crawford's property. That makes us murderers. That's not justice. Then what? I asked. We can't arrest him legally. We can't prosecute him. Any evidence we gather disappears. Any testimony we give will be forgotten. The system can't touch him because the erasure is part of the system now. Ray was quiet, studying his journal. Then he looked up. The erasure protects him because he operates in jurisdictional gaps. But what if we force the jurisdiction issue? What if we make it impossible for the case to fall through cracks? How? We make it federal and tribal simultaneously. Get both systems working the case at once. The erasure works because investigations fail, because cases go cold. But if we force multiple agencies to investigate simultaneously, document everything redundantly, it's harder to erase. Crawford is federal, Sarah pointed out. He'll just shut down the FBI side. Not if we go over his head. Not if we make this so public, so documented that even the erasure can't hide it. An idea was forming. Dangerous, probably illegal, but it might work. We force his confession, I said. Record it, broadcast it, make it impossible to erase because it's everywhere at once. Then we arrest him publicly, with witnesses, with multiple agencies present. We make the justice so visible, so documented, that the land has to acknowledge it. How do we force a confession from an FBI agent who knows we're going to forget everything in 2 days? I looked at Crawford's property, at the shed full of evidence that was slowly being erased even as we spoke. We use what he values most, his protection, his invisibility. We threaten to take it away. That afternoon, we set the trap. I called Crawford from a burner phone. "Sheriff River, still remember me?" "For now, but I'm forgetting. You were right, the erasure is winning." "Of course it is. By tomorrow, you won't even remember Angela's name. That's why I'm calling. I want to make a deal. Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of deal? I stop investigating. I destroy my copies of the documentation. I convince Ray to burn his journal. In exchange, you give me something. What could I possibly give you? Answers. I need to understand how you did it, how you figured out the erasure, how you used it. Before I forget, I want to know the truth. Professional curiosity. More silence. I could almost hear him thinking, calculating. His ego wanted recognition. 30 years of perfect murders, and nobody knew. Nobody appreciated the artistry. The opportunity to explain it to someone before they forgot might be irresistible. "Where?" he finally asked. "The shed. Your property, tonight at 9 p.m., just you and me. You'll be armed. So will you. But I'll be alone, and in 2 days I won't remember any of this anyway. What have you got to lose? If you're trying to trap me, Sheriff, it won't work. The erasure protects me. I know. That's why I'm surrendering. I can't win, but I want to understand before I forget." He agreed. I knew he would. The chance to boast, to explain his brilliance to someone who could appreciate it, even temporarily, was too tempting. We prepared carefully. Sarah and Ray set up recording equipment around the property, hidden cameras and microphones. We needed his confession on tape, from multiple angles, with redundant backups. But we also needed something else. Insurance against the erasure. Ray brought tribal elders, men and women who knew the old stories, who understood the spiritual mechanics of what we were dealing with. They performed a ceremony around the property, creating what they called a truth circle. Inside this circle, one elder explained, lies cannot survive. Truth is forced into the light. Even erasure has limits in a truth circle. It's old magic, older than the curse that's been protecting this man. Will it stop the erasure completely? No. But it will slow it, long enough for justice to work, if justice is quick. At 8:45 p.m., I entered Crawford's property alone. The shed door was open, lights on inside. Crawford was waiting, standing beside his trophy wall of victims' photos. "Sheriff River, right on time, Agent Crawford." He gestured at the photos. 37, took me 3 decades. Most serial killers get caught after 5 or 6. I've septupled that and never even came close to arrest. Do you know why? The erasure. The erasure. Beautiful, isn't it? I discovered it by accident, 1978, my first year assigned to Wind River. A young Shoshone woman disappeared. Case went cold. A week later, I went to follow up with the family, and they didn't remember having a daughter. Birth certificate was blank. It was impossible, but it was real. So you decided to test it. I had to understand it. The scientist in me. I started investigating the pattern, talking to elders, digging through records. The erasure happens when Native women are murdered in jurisdictional gaps. When justice fails, the land erases the victim to preserve peace, removes the evidence of the crime, of the injustice. He walked around the shed, touching his tools like they were art pieces. I realized I could weaponize it. If I killed in specific locations, in ways that confused jurisdiction, the cases would go cold. Federal wouldn't take it seriously. Tribal police didn't have resources. Local sheriffs didn't have authority. And then, like magic, the victims would disappear. Not just die, but be erased completely. Perfect crime. 37 times. 37 that you know about. The erasure is so effective, even I forget some of them. They're gone so completely that even the killer can't remember. That's true perfection, Sheriff. A crime so perfect even the perpetrator forgets committing it. He turned to face me. But you know what's really beautiful? Nobody can stop me. Even now, knowing what you know, you can't stop me. In 2 days, you'll forget this conversation. You'll forget Angela Blackburn, forget this shed, forget me. And I'll continue my work. Why? I asked. Why kill them at all? Because I can. Because I discovered a loophole in reality itself, and I'd be a fool not to use it. And because... He paused, something darker crossing his face. Because they're invisible anyway. Native women, murdered on reservations, their cases unsolved. Nobody cares, Sheriff. Nobody even notices. The erasure just makes literal what was already true. They were forgotten before I killed them. I felt rage building, but I kept my voice calm. And Angela Blackburn? Pretty girl. Smart. Saw me at a previous disposal site, recognized me from FBI visits to the reservation. She was asking questions, making connections. I couldn't let her expose the pattern, so she had to go. Where's her body? In the forest about 5 miles north, buried deep. Not that it matters. In 2 days, nobody will remember she existed to look for a body. Is that what you told yourself for 37 murders? I don't need to tell myself anything. The land tells me I'm right every time it erases a victim. If what I was doing was truly wrong, the erasure wouldn't protect me. But it does. For 30 years it has. That's validation, Sheriff. The earth itself agrees with me. That was enough. I'd gotten what I needed. His confession, his admission of methodology, his revelation of burial sites. All recorded. I glanced toward where I knew the hidden cameras were positioned. Ray was watching, waiting for my signal. "You're wrong," I said. "The erasure doesn't validate you." It's not protection. It's the land's way of dealing with systemic injustice, and you're about to learn the difference between protection and punishment. Crawford's expression changed. "What did you do?" "I stopped the erasure. Made sure your confession would survive. Truth Circle ceremony. Multiple recording devices, witnesses from both federal and tribal jurisdictions. And most importantly, I pulled out my phone, showing him the live stream. 200 people watching this conversation in real time, including FBI supervisors, tribal council members, and the families of your victims. His face went pale. That's not possible. The erasure would have stopped the recording. Erasure works in jurisdictional gaps. We eliminated the gaps, forced all the systems to work together simultaneously. Your confession is recorded by tribal police, county sheriff, and federal witnesses. It's been backed up to servers in 3 states. It's been seen by hundreds of people. It doesn't matter. In 2 days, everyone forgets. Wrong. Ray, now. Ray and Sarah emerged from hiding, along with 6 tribal police officers and 3 FBI agents I'd contacted directly, bypassing Crawford's chain of command. Thomas Crawford, I said, you're under arrest for the murders of Angela Blackburn and 36 other women. You have the right to remain silent. As I read him his rights, I saw something I'd never seen before. The erasure, visible, a shimmer in the air, like heat waves, trying to warp reality around Crawford, trying to erase the arrest, the confession, the evidence. But the truth circle held. The ceremony Ray's elders had performed was stronger than the curse. Or maybe it was the documentation, the redundancy, the fact that justice was finally happening in full view of multiple systems simultaneously. Crawford started laughing as we cuffed him. You think you've won? The erasure is still active. In 2 days, you'll forget. The recordings will corrupt. The witnesses will lose their memories. I'll be released, and this will all disappear. Maybe, I said. Or maybe when justice is actually served, the erasure stops. Let's find out. We transported Crawford to federal custody. The arrest was documented by 3 separate agencies. His confession was entered into evidence by tribal police, county sheriff's department, and FBI internal affairs. And then we waited to see if we'd remember. Day 6. 1 day until I was supposed to forget. I woke up knowing exactly who Angela Blackburn was. I remembered her face, her case, every detail. The erasure had stopped. I called Ray. You remember? Everything. And John, check your records. I opened the case file. All the documentation was still there. Photos, notes, witness statements. Nothing had been erased. It's working, Ray said. Justice is breaking the curse. But the real test came when we visited Rita Blackburn. She opened the door, and her eyes were red from crying. Sheriff River, did you find her? Did you find my Angela? You remember her? Remember her? Of course, I remember my daughter. How could I forget? The erasure had reversed. Rita remembered Angela now because justice was being served. The land was restoring what it had taken. Over the next week, more memories returned. Families suddenly remembered daughters they'd forgotten. Birth certificates reappeared. Photos that had been blank now showed faces. All 37 victims were returning to reality. The FBI investigation expanded. With Crawford's confession and the evidence from his properties, they found burial sites, recovered remains, confirmed identities. Every single victim from Ray's journal, plus dozens more we hadn't known about. Crawford was charged with 63 counts of first-degree murder spanning 3 decades. The case made national headlines. FBI agent used jurisdictional loopholes to murder Indigenous women for 30 years. But the media didn't know the whole truth. They couldn't. How do you explain erasure, reality-warping curses, the land itself protecting killers? We kept that part out of the official record. Only a few people knew the full truth. Me, Ray, Sarah, the tribal elders who'd performed the ceremony. And we'd carry that knowledge forward, watching for any signs that the erasure might return. Day 7 should have been the day I forgot everything. Instead, it was the day Angela Blackburn's body was found, exactly where Crawford said he'd buried her. She was returned to her mother, given a proper burial, mourned by a community that now remembered her. At her funeral, Rita Blackburn approached me. "Thank you for not forgetting her," she said. "Everyone else did, for a little while. But you kept looking. You kept remembering. I almost didn't," I admitted. "The erasure nearly won. But it didn't. You fought for her. You fought for all of them. She was right. We'd fought against reality itself and won, but I knew the truth was more complicated. We'd won because we'd forced justice through a broken system. We'd bent rules, ignored jurisdictions, operated outside the law. We'd done what was necessary because the legal system had failed for 30 years. The question was, would it fail again? That night, Ray and I sat in his office, the journal open between us. "It's over," I said. "Crawford's in custody. The victims are remembered. The erasure stopped." "For now," Ray replied. "But John, the erasure is still out there. It's a response to systemic injustice, to the jurisdictional nightmare that allows MMIW to happen. We fixed one case, stopped one killer, but the conditions that created the erasure, they're still there. So it could happen again. It will happen again. As long as Native women can be murdered without justice, as long as cases fall through cracks, the land will respond. Maybe not with erasure next time, maybe something else, but it will respond." I looked at the journal, at the names that were slowly reappearing on pages that had been blank for decades. Reality healing itself, restoring the victims. "Then we make sure it doesn't," I said. "We fix the system. We close the gaps. We make sure jurisdiction isn't a shield for killers. That's bigger than one sheriff and one tribal police chief. Then we make it bigger." Crawford's case is national news. People are paying attention. Maybe we can use that attention to fix what's broken. Ray nodded slowly. "Maybe. But John, you need to know something. The erasure stopped, but it left a mark on you. You fought it directly, resisted it for 6 days. That changes a person." "What do you mean?" "You'll remember things others forget. You'll see patterns others miss. You're connected to the land now, to the forces that create erasure. That's not always a gift. I didn't fully understand what he meant then. But I would, because he was right. Fighting the erasure had changed me, and in the years that followed I would need that change to fight what came next. 6 months after Crawford's arrest, I understood what Ray had meant about being marked. I started noticing gaps, conversations where people referenced someone I couldn't remember. Photos with empty spaces where logic said a person should be. Reports with missing names, redacted automatically by reality itself. The erasure was still happening, just not to me anymore. I could see what others couldn't, people being erased in real time. And once I started looking, I found them everywhere. A man in Lander mentioned his sister one day, forgot her the next. Nobody else noticed, but I noticed. I documented her. Sarah Chen, age 34, worked at the pharmacy. Within a week, she was gone from all records except my notes. A teenage boy at the high school, present one day, erased the next. His parents didn't remember him. His friends filled in the gaps without realizing, memories rearranging to make sense without him. The erasure hadn't stopped. It had just stopped being visible to most people, but I could see it, and that meant I had a responsibility. I started keeping my own journal, separate from Ray's. Every person I noticed being erased, I documented them. name, age, last known location, circumstances. Just like Ray had done for 30 years with the murdered women. Within 6 months, I had 43 names. Not all of them were murder victims. Some were suicides on tribal land. Some were people who died in jurisdictional confusion, bodies found in places where nobody was quite sure who should investigate. Some simply disappeared, and nobody remembered them existed to file a missing person report. The erasure responded to all unresolved deaths in the jurisdictional gaps. Crawford had been just one killer exploiting it. The phenomenon was broader, older, more insidious. I showed my journal to Ray. "You're seeing what I've been seeing for 30 years, he said. The full scope of it. Crawford was just the obvious manifestation. But the erasure is constant, responding to every failure of justice on or near the reservation. How many people have been erased? I don't know. Hundreds, maybe thousands over the decades. The ones I documented were the obvious murders. But you're right, there are others. People who die in ways that confuse jurisdiction, who fall through bureaucratic cracks. The land erases them because their deaths go unresolved. This can't continue. What choice do we have? We can't solve every unresolved death. We can't fix the jurisdictional nightmare overnight. The erasure is a symptom of a broken system, and we're just two people trying to hold back the tide. He was right, but I couldn't accept it. I'd stopped Crawford, saved Angela and the others, but the erasure continued, claiming new victims every week. I needed help, federal help. So I reached out to the FBI agents who'd helped arrest Crawford. Some thought I was crazy when I tried to explain the broader pattern, but one agent listened. Special Agent Maria Santos had been part of the team that processed Crawford's evidence. She was Latina, from New Mexico, and she'd grown up near the Navajo Nation. She understood jurisdictional issues, understood how cases fell through cracks. When I showed her my journal of erased people, she didn't dismiss it. "I've noticed this too," she said. "Cases where I could swear there was a victim, but when I go back to check, there's no record. I thought I was misremembering, but if you're seeing the same thing, it's real." The erasure is real, and it's getting worse. We formed a task force. Me, Ray, Sarah, Agent Santos, and 3 tribal police officers from different reservations. 7 people who could see the erasure, who remembered the erased. Our goal was simple. Document every erasure we witnessed, then try to solve the underlying case before it completed. Force justice quickly enough to reverse the erasure. It was exhausting, impossible work. For every case we solved, 3 more appeared. But we kept at it, knowing that every person we saved from erasure was a life restored, a family that wouldn't have to forget their loved one. 1 year after Crawford's arrest, Angela Blackburn came to see me. She'd finished her associate degree and was planning to transfer to University of Wyoming. She'd survived her physical injuries from Crawford's assault, but the trauma lingered. She'd been erased from reality for a week, forgotten by everyone including her own mother. That kind of existential horror doesn't heal quickly. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for not forgetting me. Rita told me you fought the erasure for 6 days to keep my memory alive. I did what anyone would do. No, most people forgot. You didn't. Why? Because you deserved to be remembered. Because your life mattered." She was quiet for a moment, then, "I've been thinking about what happened, about the erasure, and I want to understand it, study it. Maybe I can help figure out how to stop it. Angela, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do. I was erased. I know what that feels like to not exist. And if it's happening to others, if people are being forgotten while their families watch, I need to help stop it." She enrolled at UW as an anthropology major, focusing on indigenous studies and legal systems. She was brilliant, driven, focused in a way that comes from surviving something impossible. Over the next 2 years, Angela became part of our task force. She brought academic rigor to what we were doing, researching the historical patterns, documenting the jurisdictional issues that created gaps where erasure could happen. She discovered something crucial. The erasure didn't just respond to murders. It responded to systemic injustice of all kinds. When Native people died and the system failed them, regardless of how they died, the erasure activated. It's the land's immune response, she theorized. When justice fails repeatedly in the same location, reality itself tries to fix the problem by removing evidence of the failure. It's not protecting criminals, it's protecting itself from the accumulation of unresolved trauma. So, how do we stop it? We don't stop it. We prevent the conditions that trigger it. We fix the jurisdictional issues. We make sure every death is investigated properly, every case resolved. We remove the gaps where erasure happens. It was a good theory, but implementing it required changing federal law, tribal sovereignty structures, state jurisdictions. It required overhauling a system that had been broken for over a century. Still, we tried. Angela and Agent Santos worked with advocacy groups, with tribal councils, with federal legislators. They used Crawford's case as evidence of how jurisdictional confusion enabled serial killers, how the erasure was a symptom of deeper injustice. Slowly, painfully slowly, things started to change. New federal laws increased tribal police authority. Joint task forces formed to handle cross-jurisdictional cases. Resources flowed to reservations, funding investigators, forensic labs, victim services. The gaps began to close. Not completely, not everywhere, but gradually. And the erasure began to slow. My journal of erased people went from 43 names in 6 months to 20 names in the next year, then 12 names the year after that. It was working. Not perfectly, but better than before. 3 years after Crawford's arrest, on the anniversary of Angela's disappearance and erasure, we held a ceremony on Wind River Reservation. It wasn't just for Angela. It was for all 63 of Crawford's confirmed victims, and for the hundreds of others who'd been erased over the decades. The ones we knew about and the ones we'd never recover because they'd been erased so completely that even my marked perception couldn't detect them. Families came from across the region. Families who now remembered their daughters, sisters, mothers because justice had been served. Families who'd lived for years with blank spaces in their memories, suddenly restored when Crawford was arrested. Rita Blackburn spoke about Angela, about the week she'd forgotten her daughter existed, about the horror of those missing memories returning all at once. "I'm grateful Angela was found," Rita said. "I'm grateful she's alive and thriving. But I think about the families who aren't this lucky, the ones whose loved ones are still erased, still forgotten. We have to keep fighting for them." After the ceremony, Ray pulled me aside. "John, there's something you need to know. The mark the erasure left on you, it's not permanent." "What do you mean?" "You can see the erased because you fought the curse directly, but that sensitivity fades. In another year, maybe 2, you'll stop noticing the gaps. You'll become like everyone else, unable to see what's being erased." "Is that happening to you?" "It already has. I can't see the new erasures anymore. Haven't been able to for 6 months. That's why you've been leading the task force. Why you've been the one documenting the new cases. You're the only one left who can still see it." I felt a chill. "So, when my sensitivity fades, nobody will see the erasures anymore." "Not unless we find someone else who's fought the curse and survived. Not unless we mark someone else the way you were marked. We can't deliberately expose people to erasure just to give them the ability to see it. That's monstrous. I know. But John, when your sensitivity fades, we'll be blind again. The erasure will continue, but nobody will notice. People will be forgotten, and we won't even know to mourn them. It was a horrible thought, but he was right. My marked perception was already fading. The gaps I'd been seeing clearly 6 months ago now required more concentration to notice. Within a year, I might not see them at all, unless something changed. Unless we truly fixed the system, closed all the gaps, prevented all the conditions that triggered erasure. It seemed impossible. But we'd done impossible things before. 5 years after Crawford's arrest, I retired from the sheriff's department. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The stress of fighting erasure, of documenting the forgotten, had taken its toll. But I didn't stop working. I just changed roles. I founded a nonprofit, the Remembering Project. Our mission was simple: document and investigate deaths in jurisdictional gaps, advocate for systemic change, and support families of the erased. Angela joined as Director of Research. Sarah left law enforcement to become our lead investigator. Agent Santos remained with the FBI but worked closely with us, serving as our federal liaison. And Ray, who'd been keeping the original journal for 30 years, finally passed it to us. It became the foundation of our archive, the starting point for all our research. "It's your responsibility now," he told me. "Keep remembering. Keep fighting. Don't let anyone be forgotten." I promised him I would. 8 years after Crawford's arrest, he died in federal prison. Heart attack, the official report said. Natural causes. But I wondered. The erasure had protected him for 30 years. When that protection was removed, when justice was finally served, did the land extract its payment? Did Crawford experience the same erasure he'd inflicted on others, slowly being forgotten by reality until even his own existence felt tenuous? I'd never know. But I like to think that somewhere in the metaphysics of the Wind River Basin, the land had achieved balance. 10 years after the case, I gave a talk at the University of Wyoming. Angela had arranged it as part of a symposium on missing and murdered Indigenous women and jurisdictional justice. I stood before a room of students, activists, law enforcement, tribal leaders. I told them about Crawford, about the erasure, about the 63 confirmed victims, and hundreds of others who'd been forgotten. Most of them thought the erasure was metaphorical, a powerful way of describing how MMIW victims are forgotten by the system, erased from public consciousness, remembered only by those who loved them. Only a few understood the literal truth. That reality itself had been warping to protect killers, to erase victims, to maintain a false peace built on forgotten trauma. But metaphorical or literal, the work was the same. Remember, document, fight for justice. At the end of the talk, a young Shoshone woman raised her hand. "Sheriff River, do you still see the erasures? Can you still detect when someone's being forgotten?" I paused, considering how to answer honestly. "Not anymore," I admitted. "My sensitivity faded years ago. I can't see the gaps like I used to, but I don't need to see them to know they're there. The work continues whether I can see it or not. So someone else could be being erased right now, and we wouldn't know. Yes, that's possible. That's why we need systemic change, not just individual heroes. We need laws, resources, cultural shifts. We need to close the gaps permanently, not just patch them temporarily." After the talk, Angela approached me. "You know what I realized?" she said. "The erasure, it's not just about individuals being forgotten. It's about entire communities being erased. Indigenous people, our cultures, our sovereignty. The erasure of murder victims is just a microcosm of a larger erasure that's been happening for centuries." you're right. So how do we stop it? We do what you did for me. We refuse to forget. We document, we remember, we force the world to acknowledge what it wants to erase. And we don't give up, even when it seems impossible. She was wiser at 29 than I'd been at 50. Now, 15 years after Crawford's arrest, I'm 65 years old. The Remembering Project has expanded to cover 6 states, documenting and investigating hundreds of cases. We've helped close numerous jurisdictional gaps, advocated for dozens of new laws, and supported thousands of families. The erasure still happens. I can't see it anymore, but I know it's there. Reports still come in of people who vanish from memory, cases that disappear from records, gaps in reality that nobody else notices. But it's less than before. The gaps are smaller. The system is slowly healing. And that's what matters. Not perfection, but progress. Not complete victory, but the refusal to surrender. I keep Ray's journal in my office, the original leather-bound book that started everything. 20 names have been added since Crawford's arrest, people who were erased despite our best efforts. But in the past 5 years, only 2 new names have been added. 2 instead of 20. Still too many, but evidence that the work is making a difference. Angela will take over the Remembering Project when I'm gone. She's the right person for it. Someone who understands erasure from the inside, who knows what it feels like to not exist. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. You can't fight erasure by being loud and visible. You fight it by being stubbornly, persistently present. By documenting, remembering, refusing to forget. The erasure wants to remove us from reality. Our job is to dig our heels in and say, we were here, we are here. We will not be forgotten. Sometimes I drive out to Wind River Reservation, to mile marker 47 where Angela was last seen before Crawford took her. There's a memorial there now, 63 names carved in stone. The women Crawford killed, the women we brought back from erasure. I stand there and remember each name, each face, each life that almost disappeared. And I make a promise to them and to myself. As long as I'm alive, as long as I have memory and voice and will, I will keep fighting erasure. Not just for them. For everyone who's been forgotten, everyone who's been erased by systems that don't care, by realities that would rather hide injustice than face it. We remember. We document. We fight. And slowly, painfully, year by year, we close the gaps where forgetting happens. That's the work. That's the calling. That's what I learned from Angela Blackburn, from Ray Redfeather, from 63 women who almost disappeared forever. You can't kill memory, not permanently, because even when reality itself tries to erase someone, even when the land conspires to protect killers and forget victims, human will can push back. We remember because we choose to remember. And that choice, repeated every day, by every person who refuses to forget, is stronger than any erasure. The Wind River still holds its secrets. Some people are still being forgotten. The gaps haven't all closed. But they're closing, one case at a time, one law at a time, one remembered name at a time. And as long as people like Angela continue the work, as long as we keep documenting, keep fighting, keep refusing to let anyone be erased, the forgetting will lose, memory will win, and the vanished will remain.